All right, boys and girls, let's go on to chapter 4 of Turtle in Paradise. The Conch Telegraph. Lots of folks go to bed hungry these days. I've heard of men fighting over scraps in the garbage cans and about the lady who taught her kids to steal milk. Remember, they're in the Great Depression, and a lot of people don't have jobs and they don't have money. Because Mama works in rich folks' homes, we've had it better than most. But after looking at what Aunt Minnie sets in front of me for breakfast, I start thinking that going hungry might not be that bad after all. It sounds like her breakfast is kind of yucky looking. I stare at my plate. There's a piece of thick toast with something green and slimy smeared on top of it. What is it, I ask. Alligator pear on Cuban bread. Aunt Minnie purses her lips. I don't cater to fussy children. I pick it up and take a bite. It tastes a lot better than it looks. I read the letter from your mother. She says she's planning on marrying this Archie fella. Aunt Minnie raises her eyebrows. He planning on marrying her? I don't know. What's he do? Aunt Minnie asks. He's a salesman, I say. Is he nice? Is he good to her? He bought me these shoes. Aunt Minnie crosses her arms. I spent my whole childhood taking care of Sadie Bell, and here I am taking care of you now. I sure hope you have more sense than her. I'm not sure how I feel about her saying Mama doesn't have sense, so I change the subject. May I have a glass of milk, please? I ask, and she says, help yourself. I get a glass down off a shelf and open the ice box. A scary, insect-like creature with a pointy tail scuttles out, waving mean little claws, and I jump back. Termite starts barking, but keeps his distance. What do you think it is? Scorpion, Ma, Bean says. Aunt Minnie picks up a rolling pin from the counter and brings it down hard on the scorpion. Kermit looks at me. They like to hide in dark places. Like shoes, Aunt Minnie says, pointedly, staring down at my feet. Oh, I know, I say. Mama warned me to shake them out before I put them on. She must remember the time she didn't shake hers out, Aunt Minnie says. She takes a dustpan and sweeps up the dead scorpion and then walks out of the room. What's an alligator pear, anyhow? I ask. Are all kids from New Jersey as dumb as you? Beans ask. That's an alligator pear, Kermit says, pointing to a bowl of avocados. That's an avocado, I say. One of the rich ladies we worked for liked them in her salad. What does this Archie sell anyway? Bean says. Encyclopedias, I say. Encyclopedias? To who? Dumb kids like you who don't know what an avocado is, I say. Ooh, she's sassy. The front door slams open, and Pork Chop comes walking down the hall into the kitchen. Ready, pal? Pork Chop asks. Ready, Beans replies, smoothing back his hair and slapping his cap on. Kermit stands up. Can I come? Buddy asks. Course you can't come, Buddy, says Beans. Aunt Minnie walks back into the kitchen and groans at the overflowing basket of clothes in the corner. Take Buddy with you. Turtle, too. I don't want children underfoot. I need to finish all this laundry today, or Miss Cardillo won't pay me anything. Beans frowns. Hot dog, Buddy says. Outside, the heat hits me like a slap in the face. Kermit disappears around the side of the house and returns a moment later with a load of old quilts and then piles them into a wagon. We start walking down the sleepy lane. Kermit pulls the wagon and Buddy dawdles, stopping every few minutes to pick up stones. Where are we going? I ask. We got pudding today, Kermit says. We stop at a small house that has a tree with blooming red flowers in front of it. The sound of a baby crying rings out of the open window. Beans knocks on the door. It opens and I see the source of the racket. A bald, fat, red-faced baby being held by his tired mother. Morning, Miss Lowe, Beans says. Oh, Beans, the woman says. I don't think I've ever been so happy to see someone. How's he doing? Beans asked. I swear he didn't sleep more than 5 minutes last night. He's teething real bad. Don't worry, Miss Lowe. We'll take care of him, Beans says. I just fed him, she says, and then practically tosses the crying baby into Bean's hands. She gives Porkchop a small stack of cloth diapers and goes back inside. Bean sticks the baby in the wagon on top of the quilts, and we start moving again. The baby's crying his head off like he's been tortured. What's wrong with him, I ask. Nothing, Bean says. Puddin' is the worst baby we've ever had. It's his mother's fault, Porkchop explains. She spoils him, picks him up every time he cries. You gotta let a baby be, Kermit says. That's why we don't let girls in our gang, Bean says. Girls always want to pick up the babies. Not me, I say. I don't like babies. They're like Shirley Temple. Everyone thinks they're cute, but the fact is, they're annoying. All they do is cry and make messy diapers. Pudding is crying furiously, kicking his little feet. Time to wrap him up, fellas, Beans announces with authority. If the diaper gang were an army, then Beans would be the general, and Porkchop would be his lieutenant, which means all the grunt work is left for poor Kermit. Blanket, Porkchop orders. Kermit lays out a thin blanket on the ground. Baby, he says, and Kermit hands him Pudding. Porkchop proceeds to roll the baby up like a little sausage. He tucks the blanket tight around him, muffling his cries. We've barely walked a few steps, and when the baby abruptly stops crying, screwing his eyes shut against the sun, and he's fast asleep. Works every time, Bean says in a satisfied voice. Can he breathe, I ask. Ain't lost a baby yet. Why is he called Pudding? Well, Miss Lowe thought that she was getting fat from eating too much banana pudding, and it turned out it was a baby, Kermit explains. A white-haired old man comes running down the street. He looks around and then darts down the alleyway. A moment later, a lady comes walking towards us fast. She's got a streak of flour on her cheek, as if she was baking and got interrupted. He went that way, Miss Alvarez, Beans says, pointing. Thank you, Beans, she says in a weary voice. Second time this morning this has happened. She smiles at me. You must be Turtle. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you, too, I say, and she walks off quickly. Kermit taps his skull. Old Mr. Alvarez ain't right in the head anymore. Poor Miss Alvarez spends her life chasing after him. One time he ran naked down Duval Street, Buddy exclaims. You should have seen it. One time, I don't think I would have wanted to see that, I say. An Iceman is making his deliveries, and Bean calls out, You got any spare chips, Mr. Roberts? Sure thing, Beans, the man says, handing out slivers of ice. Don't forget me, Buddy says. Wouldn't dream of it, Buddy, Mr. Roberts says, giving the little boy a chip. And one to me, too. You must be Turtle. My, I do believe you're as pretty as your mother. I suck on the ice until all that's left is a cold memory. How come everyone knows who I am? I ask. Conk telegraph, Porkchop says. What? Conks like to talk. Everyone knew you were here 5 minutes after you showed up yesterday, Kermit says. Besides, you're related to most of them. Mama told me that conks are what folks in Key West call themselves. A lot of them originally came from the Bahamas, where they fished for conch. When I asked Mama about my conch relatives, she said her parents had been dead for a long time, but that I had a lot of conch cousins. Too bad she didn't tell me that they were all snotty boys. Beans led us to the waterfront. It's a hive of activity, bustling with boats. There's a fella selling live, flopping fish right on the dock, and another one who's unloading some scary-looking cargo, dead sharks. Buddy climbs on a railing and stares down at the water. I sure do love watching them, he says, and I look too. The biggest turtle imaginable breaks the surface of the water like a lazy cow. Another pops up and then another. There's a whole crowd of them. What are they all doing there, I ask. It's a turtle crawl, Kermit says. It's where they keep the sea turtles until they're butchered. Don't fall over, Porkchop says to me, snapping his teeth. You'll end up supper. Hi, Slowpoke, Beans calls out to a man working on the deck of a boat. The man turns. He's tan with a sunburned patch around his neck, and his hair is the color of caramel. He's wearing a wide straw hat. Hey there, Beans, he says. I stopped in and saw your dad. He said to say hi. Thanks, Beans says. I hear you lost your first mate. Why don't you hire me? You know what a good sailor I am. I know, Slowpoke says, but I already hired Ollie. I'll be sure to keep you in mind for next time. The man's cool gray eyes flick over to me and go still. Who's your friend here? That's Turtle. She's a cousin, Buddy says. And she's got a cat named Smokey. Turtle, huh? He says, studying me. You wouldn't happen to be related to Sadie Bell Gifford, would you? That's my mama, I say. Really? Slowpoke says. Is she here with you? No, she's in New Jersey. I see, he says. Say, Slowpoke, you get any loggerheads? Beans asks. Not this time, he says, but I did all right. He waves his thumb at the deck of the boat. It's piled high with black blobs. What are those, I ask. That's gold you're looking at right there, Slowpoke says. They're sponges, Kermit says. Sure don't look like any sponge I've ever seen, I say. Gotta clean 'em yet. Then they'll be fine enough for a lady's face, Slowpoke says. Pudding fusses in the wagon and Beans frowns. We gotta keep moving, Slowpoke, or Pudding will wake up. He's teething bad. Slowpoke looks at the baby. You should try a little whiskey on his gums. We did that once, Beans says. Didn't work. Slowpoke winks. Then you didn't give him enough. So they've met lots of people, and everybody knows who Turtle is. And they all say that she looks a lot like her mom. And remember, in the other chapters, it said that she does look a lot like her mom, except for they have different color eyes. But everybody recognizes her right to begin with. And then we met a fisherman who catches or gets sponges. And so like the sponges you might use to wash your dishes with, the ones that we use today are mostly synthetic, meaning that people made them. But originally, sponges like that were actually taken out of the ocean and dried out and cleaned and everything. And people use them to clean with or to wash with or those kinds of things. So that's an interesting fact about Florida history, is that we have a sponging industry. All right, I'll see you next time for Chapter 5.